I came home from my book club meeting to find an empty space on my living room wall. The painting was gone, my grandmother Octavia's painting, the one she'd given me 50 years ago with trembling hands and tears in her eyes, telling me to keep it safe always, the one my husband Ryland had complained about for our entire 38-year marriage, calling it ugly, dated, worthless. I stood frozen, staring at the blank wall, my heart pounding. I'm Thessaly Brennan, 62 years old, and I knew immediately what had happened. Ryland had finally done what he'd threatened to do for years. He'd gotten rid of it when he walked in carrying takeout food, smiling like nothing was wrong. I asked the question I already knew the answer to. Where's my grandmother's painting? Ryland set down the food and shrugged. I sold it at that estate sale downtown. Got $200 for it. Not bad for that old thing, he said it casually, like he'd done me a favor. Like he'd cleaned out a closet instead of selling a piece of my family history without permission. My hands started shaking. You sold my grandmother's painting. The one she specifically gave to me. Without asking, Ryland rolled his eyes. Thessaly, it was taking up valuable wall space. It didn't match our decor. I've been telling you for years we should get rid of it. He walked to the kitchen, already moving on to the next topic. I used the money to buy new golf clubs. You're welcome, by the way. That painting was an eyesore. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. That painting had hung in my grandmother's tiny apartment for as long as I could remember. She'd lived in near poverty her entire life, working as a seamstress, but that painting held pride of place above her sofa. When I was 12, she'd sat me down and told me about it. This painting is special, Thessaly. More special than anyone knows. When I'm gone, it goes to you. Promise me you'll keep it safe. I'd promised, at her funeral when I was 15. The painting was the only thing I'd asked for. I'd carried it through college, through my marriage, through 7 different houses. And now it was gone, sold for $200 to buy golf clubs. I walked to our bedroom, closed the door, and cried until I couldn't breathe. For 3 days, I barely spoke to Ryland. He seemed confused by my reaction, genuinely unable to understand why I was so upset. It was just a painting, he kept saying. We can buy another one, but it wasn't just a painting. It was my grandmother's voice telling me stories while she sewed. It was her hands touching the frame lovingly every time she dusted. It was the last physical connection I had to a woman who'd raised me when my own parents couldn't. On the 4th day, I went to the estate sale location, desperately hoping to find who'd bought it. The organizer remembered the painting. Oh yes, strange piece, abstract, very old frame. A man named Harold Finch purchased it, paid cash, didn't leave contact information. I'm afraid, my heart sank, gone, truly gone. I hired a private investigator to find Harold Finch. It cost me $500 I'd saved from my part-time library work. Money Ryland didn't know about. 3 weeks later, the investigator called. He'd found 6 Harold Finches in our state, but none of them had purchased a painting recently. The trail was cold. I felt defeated. Hollow, Ryland had started acting normal again, as if nothing had happened. He'd even suggested we take a vacation with the money he'd been saving. I wanted to scream that his golf clubs were bought with my grief. But I said nothing. What was the point? The painting was gone. I'd failed my grandmother's dying request. I spent my nights looking at old photographs, trying to remember every detail of that painting. The swirls of color, the signature I'd never been able to read in the corner. Then, 6 weeks after the painting disappeared, our doorbell rang. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Ryland was at his weekly poker game. I opened the door to find a woman in her 50s, impeccably dressed, holding a leather folder. Mrs. Brennan, Thessaly Brennan. I nodded warily. She smiled, but her eyes were intense with barely contained excitement. My name is Dr. Minerva Ashford. I'm the director of the National Gallery of Modern Art. May I come in? I need to speak with you about a painting. My heart stopped, then started again, pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. A painting? Dr. Ashford's smile widened. Yes, a painting that I believe belonged to your grandmother, Octavia Chen and Mrs. Brennan. I need you to sit down before I tell you what we've discovered. I led Dr. Ashford to my living room, to the couch that faced the empty wall where my grandmother's painting had hung for 30 years. She noticed the blank space immediately. Is that where it was displayed? She asked softly. I nodded, unable to speak. Dr. Ashford opened her leather folder and pulled out photographs. My grandmother's painting, multiple angles, close-ups of details I'd looked at 1,000 times without really seeing. Mrs. Brennan, 6 weeks ago. A painting appeared at a small estate sale. A local art teacher happened to attend and recognized certain techniques. She contacted me. We've spent the past month authenticating it. She pulled out another photograph, this one showing the signature in the corner, enhanced and magnified. This painting was created by Raphael Chen in 1943. Does that name mean anything to you? Raphael Chen, I felt dizzy. That was my grandmother's brother. He died in World War II. She never talked about him much. It made her too sad. Dr. Ashford nodded slowly. Raphael Chen was an extraordinary artist who died at 23 during the Battle of the Bulge. Before the war, he studied in Paris under several masters. He created fewer than 30 paintings in his short life. Most were lost or destroyed. Art historians have been searching for his work for decades. She handed me another document. Mrs. Brennan, your grandmother's painting, is one of only 7 authenticated Raphael Chen pieces in existence. Based on recent auction results for his work, we estimate its value at approximately $4 million. The room tilted sideways, $4 million. $4 million. Ryland had sold it for 200. I couldn't process the information. My mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Dr. Ashford continued gently. Your grandmother protected this painting her entire life. She knew what it was, Mrs. Brennan. Raphael sent it to her from Paris in 1942. Right before he enlisted, it was his masterwork, his greatest achievement. He told her in a letter to keep it hidden, to never sell it, because someday it would be recognized for what it was. Tears were streaming down my face. My grandmother had lived in poverty, worked until her fingers bled, struggled to pay rent, and the entire time, she'd had a fortune hanging on her wall. Why didn't she sell it? I whispered. Dr. Ashford's expression softened. Because it was her brother's legacy. Because love matters more than money. And because she wanted you to have it. Dr. Ashford explained that the painting had been purchased by Harold Finch, who turned out to be a pseudonym used by a private collector. That collector had contacted the art teacher, who'd recognized the painting's significance. The collector had agreed to cooperate with authentication in exchange for first option to purchase if it was real. The problem, Dr. Ashford said carefully, is that the painting was sold without your consent. Your husband had no legal right to sell property that was gifted specifically to you. Legally, the sale is void. Hope flared in my chest. So I can get it back, Dr. Ashford nodded. Yes, but there's a complication. The collector is offering to purchase it from you legitimately for $5 million. Or you can reclaim it and do whatever you wish with it. The choice is yours. $5 million. I sat there trying to comprehend numbers that big. Dr. Ashford gave me her card and several legal documents to review. Take your time, Mrs. Brennan. But please understand that this discovery is significant to the art world. Whether you sell or keep it, I'd love to feature it in an exhibition honoring Raphael Chen's work. After she left, I sat alone in my living room, staring at the empty wall. Ryland came home an hour later, cheerful from winning at poker. He noticed Dr. Ashford's card on the coffee table. Who stopped by? I looked at my husband of 38 years. The man who'd complained about my grandmother's painting at every dinner party. Who'd called it ugly, worthless, an eyesore, who'd sold my inheritance for golf clubs without asking permission. Someone from a museum, I said quietly. About the painting you sold. Ryland froze. What about it? I picked up the authentication documents and handed them to him. Watched his face as he read. Watched the color drain away. Watched his hands start to shake when he reached the valuation. $4 million, his voice cracked. That ugly painting was worth $4 million. I felt strangely calm, apparently. Yes, the artist was my grandmother's brother. It's one of only 7 authenticated pieces in existence. Ryland collapsed into a chair. Oh my God, Thessaly. I didn't know, you have to believe me. I didn't know, I believed him. That was almost worse. He'd sold something precious to me without caring enough to find out its value. Emotional or monetary. The museum director says the sale is void because you had no right to sell my property. I can get it back. Ryland's face went through several emotions. Relief, then calculation, then excitement. That's incredible. We can get it back and sell it properly. $5 million, Thessaly. Do you know what we could do with that money? He said we, like the painting had ever been his. Like he deserved any part of it after what he'd done. I stood up. I need you to understand something. Ryland, that painting was given to me by my grandmother specifically. It was never marital property. Legally, it belongs to me alone. Ryland waved his hand dismissively. Sure, technically, but we're married. What's yours is mine, right? We'll sell it and finally have the retirement we deserve. I looked at this man I'd spent most of my life with and realized I didn't like him very much. I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet. Over the next week, I consulted with Miss Verity Lancaster, a lawyer specializing in art law and inheritance. She confirmed what Dr. Ashford had said. The painting was my separate property, gifted to me before marriage. Ryland had committed conversion by selling it without permission. The sale was legally void. I could reclaim it and choose whether to sell, keep or donate it. What about my husband? I asked, does he have any legal claim? Miss Lancaster shook her head. None whatsoever. This is your decision alone. I also learned more about my great-uncle Raphael. The museum had found letters he'd written to my grandmother from Paris and from the war. Letters full of hope, talent, and dreams of the art he'd create after the war ended. Dreams that died with him at 23 in a frozen Belgian forest. Dr. Ashford arranged for me to see the painting at the museum's secure facility. The collector had agreed to loan it temporarily for authentication study. When I walked into the climate-controlled room and saw it again, I broke down completely. It was exactly as I remembered, but now I saw details I'd missed my entire life. The brushwork that showed Raphael's training, the colors that spoke of hope in dark times, the signature that meant he'd believed this work would survive him. I touched the frame carefully, the same frame my grandmother had dusted 10,000 times. I'm sorry, grandmother, I whispered. I tried to keep it safe, Dr. Ashford, standing respectfully in the corner, spoke softly. You did keep it safe. Mrs. Brennan, for 50 years. You honored your grandmother's wish. What happened wasn't your fault, but it felt like my fault. I'd married a man who'd valued golf clubs more than my grief. When I got home, Ryland was waiting with our son Camden, who'd driven down from Seattle. Ryland had clearly told him everything. Camden hugged me tight. Mom, I can't believe this happened, but it's amazing news, right? $5 million. I looked between my husband and son. They were both excited, already planning. Ryland wanted to buy a boat. Camden mentioned finally starting his business. Neither of them mentioned my grandmother. Neither asked if I was okay after losing and recovering something so precious. They just saw money. I made my decision in that moment. I'm keeping the painting, I said. The room went silent. Ryland's face turned red. What do you mean, keeping it? Thessaly, be reasonable. $5 million. I shook my head. I'm donating it to the National Gallery in my grandmother's name. They'll create a permanent exhibition honoring Raphael Chen's work. Ryland exploded. You can't be serious. That's our retirement, that's our future. Camden looked uncomfortable but nodded. Mom, that's a lot of money to just give away. Maybe we should talk about this. I stood firm. There's nothing to talk about. My grandmother lived in poverty protecting this painting because it was her brother's legacy. She didn't sell it when she was evicted. She didn't sell it when she couldn't afford medicine. She kept it safe so that someday the world could see her brother's talent. I'm going to honor that. Ryland's voice turned mean, a tone I'd heard more often in recent years. This is why I sold it in the first place. You're too sentimental, too emotional. You make terrible decisions. I'm your husband. I should have a say. His words hung in the air, revealing what he really thought of me. What he'd always thought, apparently. You should have a say, I repeated quietly. You sold my inheritance without permission for golf clubs. You called my grandmother's treasure an eyesore for 30 years. You never once asked why it mattered to me. And now you think you deserve a say. Ryland tried to backtrack. Thessaly, I didn't mean it like that. I just think we should be practical. I pulled out my phone and called Miss Lancaster. Put her on speaker. Miss Lancaster, can you please explain to my husband his legal standing regarding my grandmother's painting? Her voice was clear and professional. Mr. Brennan has no legal claim whatsoever. The painting is Mrs. Brennan's separate property. She can dispose of it however she wishes, including donation, without his consent or input. Ryland's face went white. I thanked Miss Lancaster and hung up. I'm donating it, that's final. The donation process took 6 weeks. Dr. Ashford was overjoyed. The museum created a beautiful exhibition space dedicated to Raphael Chen's life and work. My grandmother's painting, now properly titled Hope in Darkness, was the centerpiece at the opening ceremony. I gave a speech about Octavia, about the brother she'd lost, about the poverty she'd endured to protect his legacy. I cried through most of it. Camden stood beside me, finally understanding what he'd almost convinced me to throw away. Ryland didn't attend. He'd moved out 2 weeks after my decision, claiming he couldn't live with someone so irresponsible with money. Our marriage was effectively over, but standing in that gallery, looking at my great-uncle's masterwork properly displayed and honored, I felt peace. The museum offered me a $3 million tax deduction for the donation, which would help significantly, but that wasn't why I did it. I'm 63 now, divorced, living in a smaller house that I love. Camden visits regularly, having learned something important about value versus price. The Raphael Chen exhibition has been seen by over 200,000 people. Art students study his techniques. Historians have uncovered more of his story. My grandmother's sacrifice ensured that her baby brother's talent wasn't lost to history. Ryland tried to sue me for half the tax deduction. He lost. He married someone younger 6 months after our divorce was final. I heard she loves golf. As for me, I volunteer at the museum twice a week, telling visitors about Octavia and Raphael, about love that transcends money, about legacies that matter more than retirement plans. Sometimes people ask if I regret donating millions. I tell them the truth. My grandmother lived with $4 million on her wall and chose love over wealth every single day. I'm proud to have done the same. That painting was never about money. It was about remembering that some things are priceless. If this story made you think about what truly matters, please subscribe and comment where you're watching from. Not everything valuable has a price tag. Sometimes the most important choice is honoring love over money. Family legacy matters more than retirement accounts. Thank you for listening to my story. Never sell inherited items without permission. Document family heirlooms. Get professional appraisals. Some things are priceless not because of money, but because of the love they represent. Before you go, I need to know something. What hit you the hardest? The betrayal. The moment everything fell apart. The twist you never saw coming. Drop it in the comments right now. And tell me what you want to see next. Medical fraud, family secrets, financial crimes, hidden identities. Your ideas become our next stories. If this story kept you glued to the screen, hit that like button. If you want more shocking true stories that expose the truth, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss what's coming next. Thanks for letting me share this story with you. The next one drops soon, and it's going to shake you even harder. See you there.